Okay, so here we are with the poem London by William Blake. We're just going to walk through some context first about Blake. Mrs. Elliott's a little bit obsessed with William Blake, so I'm also going to be putting some other documents that look at the context in more detail on the drive for you. But the main things to understand about Blake with regards to this context is that we're still in the Romantic period, which means we have the Industrial Revolution. Now, Blake grew up in London. He didn't like the industrialisation of his home city. It upset and bothered him. Blake was also anti-monarchy. He didn't like the ruling classes and anti-established church. He was deeply religious himself, but he did not like the way that the current church lacked what he deemed Christian values, in that they seemed to be only interested in the rich and making money rather than helping poor people out. We've also got the French Revolution as well. So that involved an uprising of people against government and monarchy. And initially Blake was a supporter of that ideal. However, the French Revolution in this period went all a bit horribly wrong. So although he liked ideas about revolution, he didn't want it to be echoed in exactly the same way in Britain. So that's some context about Blake. Like I said, I am a massive fan. I have lots of books. Look, there's another one. So I will be posting extracts from this stuff for you to have a look at in more detail. There we are. Okay, so we're going to look at the title and first few lines of the poem now. So this is London by William Blake. Obviously the title, remember you can analyse titles and talk about them. The title is of the city itself, so it tells us as readers that it's the city. It also tells us we're talking about the capital of England and the UK. It also tells us that the city must be of some importance to Blake for him to be discussing it. Now, we did learn in the context earlier that he actually grew up in this city. So it is his hometown as well. So it is of importance to him. And giving it that title of his poem as well obviously shows the importance. We know that we're going to discuss what's going on in London through the rest of it. So the first few lines, I wander through each chartered street near where the chartered Thames does flow. So vocabulary wise, we've got the word chartered, which means built, man-made and constructed and owned. Okay, and we've got the word Thames as well that we're going to come up with here. So if you didn't already know, that's the river that runs through, and it was used extensively for trade in the Romantic period. So I wander through each chartered street. So the streets are man-made and built and kind of commercialised through the Industrial Revolution, near where the chartered Thames. So this is about the restriction of nature, the restriction of the river, and how it's been turned into something that is industrialised and controlled. So the repetition there of the word chartered emphasises his disgust at that. I wander through each chartered street, so it's bad enough that the streets are controlled and chartered. However, it emphasises with the repetition and the extremity of the Thames being controlled here. Obviously notice as well, I wander through each chartered street near where the chartered Thames does flow. It's got a nice cadence to it, which is almost as if we're walking at pace through the streets with him. But the use of the word wander here suggests that this is not, for him, it is not busy. It is something that he is choosing to walk around at his own pace. So that's counterbalanced with the rhythm that we find so far. Okay, so let's look at the next section. And mark in every face I meet marks of weakness, marks of woe. So we've got here mark in every face I meet. Here is like remark, so I notice in every face I meet. The emphasis here is on every, in other words, all of the faces that he comes across, He sees marks of weakness, marks of woe. So marks here, it's obviously repetition again, represents the physical representations, because if it's a mark, it's a physical representation, but they're marks of weakness, they're marks of woe. Now weakness and woe are obviously emotions, so it's that physical representation that he's witnessing in the faces of the people he meets of weakness, of woe. He can physically see that they are weak and that they are full of sorrow. So the repetition emphasises the amount. So the combination of the repetition here with mark, marks, marks, and every is really emphasising how people are feeling, how everyone in the capital is feeling. We've also got here the vocabulary word woe. So that again is an extreme emotion, great sorrow and distress. Okay, so let's look at stanza 2. So we've got here, in every cry of every man, in every infant's cry of fear, in every voice, in every ban, the mind-forged manacles I hear. So the first thing you probably noticed is the repetition of in every, which we also had earlier on, which emphasised the amount that was going on with all the people that he saw affected. So it is repetition across here, but notice I've written number 3 here, look. Notice that in every starts each one of these successive clauses. So that makes it repetition, but specifically a rhetorical device called anaphora. And so that's where words are repeated at the beginning of the clauses to emphasise. So in every cry, in every infant, in every voice. And again, that repetition is emphasising the amount of pain and suffering that is going on here in this stanza. Notice we've got man, children as well, infants, babies, and all of the voices. So it's everyone is affected, young, old, or indifferent. Then we have on this 4th line here, the mind-forged manacles I hear. I've drawn you a little picture. I know how much you love my pictures. So let's look at the vocab in this then. So we've got ban, okay, now obviously in every ban. A ban is a legal restriction or an order. If something is banned, you know, it's not allowed. Forged, if something is forged, that means it's crafted, it's made out of iron or metal. I used to live next to an old forge, which is where they used to do that job in the old days with the metalwork. Manacles as well, so they're these. That's the lovely picture here. So a manacle is one of 2 metal bands, that's these bits, linked by a chain, and they would be to fasten either your hands or your ankles. So it's about restriction at the end of this stanza here. It's about the people crying out, okay? And then here in every ban, it's about restriction. So we've got number 3 here, the mind-forged manacles I hear. So that is a metaphor. Okay, mind forged, mind crafted, manacles is that restriction. So he's trying to say here that your own mind creates restrictions and imprisons you. You're imprisoned by your own thoughts. Therefore, he can hear in their voices that these people, okay, are restricted by their own thoughts. Is he, therefore, I don't know, maybe, trying to incite a revolution like the French Revolution, but a revolution of the mind here, okay? People being free to think individually for themselves rather than following this restriction that he hears being shouted out and told. Okay, so we're going to look at stanza 3 now. I've drawn you some more pictures, look. And so we've just finished with the mind-forged manacles I hear. Notice that was a colon. So we're going to list the things, the restrictions here that are being heard by Blake. So he says, how the chimney sweepers cry. drawn you a little picture here. So obviously chimney sweeps, you probably might know those from something like Mary Poppins or your studies of this period. But mostly they weren't big strapping men like in Mary Poppins. They were small boys. They needed to be small in stature because chimneys were obviously very narrow, and they needed to be able to climb up there with their brush and sweep the inside of the chimney out. Horrible things happen to chimney sweeps. I might do a extra session on chimney sweeps. So again, it's a child here, and that cry, okay, tells us that they're shouting out, okay, they're pained. Then we have every blackening church appalls, and the hapless soldier's sigh runs in blood down palace walls. So every blackening church. Here, the use of blackening, number 4, is ambiguous. Ambiguity is when something could mean one thing or it could mean another thing, and it's difficult for us to certainly say for sure. And usually if something's ambiguous, it's deliberately chosen by the poet or author to mean more than one thing, so it's up to us to interpret it as we will. So blackening here could be a literal blackening. So in other words, the church is black from the smog and the soot caused by the Industrial Revolution. So he could be making a statement about how everything's getting clogged up, like the chimneys are getting clogged up in the outside world. It could also be a metaphorical meaning of blackening. So i.e. the church is corrupt and dark and sinister, therefore lacks that purity of Christianity and is hypocritical. I told you earlier in the context that Blake was very anti-organised religion. He didn't agree that the church demanded contributions from the congregation financially and actually spent that money in a really bad way on themselves rather than helping the suffering chimney sweeps. And as we're about to hear, the soldiers. So then we have appalls. So the blackening church appalls. Now the word appalls means great dismay, horrifies. So for Blake's making quite a big statement here about how the church appalls him. So it could be that it's all black looking and that appalls him, i.e. he doesn't like the Industrial Revolution. Or it could be that he is disgusted and horrified with the church because of its corruption. So the second and last part of this stanza probably needs a bit more explanation as well. So we've got the hapless soldier's sigh runs in blood down palace walls. I'm trying to picture for you again. So the word hapless over here, look, means unfortunate. Okay, so their hapless soldier is an unfortunate soldier, which also infers that they're blameless. If you're unfortunate, it can't be controlled, it's out of your hands. So here we're talking about soldiers who are putting their life, unfortunately, on the line. And here, this is a really big political statement, the hapless soldier's sigh, so the noise they're making, runs in blood down palace walls. Okay, done a little visual here. Now that obviously is a metaphor. So here the metaphor is saying the palace, or rather the monarchy, are responsible for the deaths, blood, of soldiers. And this is a big statement to make, especially in this period of time, the Romantic period. It could also, therefore, be an allusion, okay, which is a reference to something called the storming of the Bastille. Now, the storming of the Bastille happened at the beginning of the French Revolution. It's one of the things attributed perhaps to causing the French Revolution. There was a lot of political uproar. People thought that the monarchy and the government were controlling their rights. So they decided to storm the Bastille, to go to the Bastille, mainly because it housed a lot of weaponry. And they wanted the weapons that were stored there. It was a prison. So they stormed the Bastille. They tried to break in to have this weaponry. And as a result of their kind of charging, they were attacked. The people who were attacked, and there was an almost massacre that went on. There was a lot of spilt blood on both sides. Many died during this action, and actually the Bastille looks a lot like this, but so does of course the Tower of London, which is of course a palace in London, which could be why Blake is making this link, this connection to rebellion and revolution and blood. But in this case, the blood is of the soldiers, the unfortunate soldiers, the hapless soldiers, and it is running down the palace walls. So it's almost as if the soldiers here know, okay, that the monarchy are responsible for their deaths, responsible for their lives and their restrictions. So yes, very dangerous time for Blake to be writing this sort of thing, and he knew it, which is why he hid it within that metaphor. Okay, so now we're going to look at the final stanza here. So we've got, but most through midnight streets I hear how the youthful harlot's curse blasts the newborn infant's tear and blights with plagues the marriage hearse. So, but most through midnight streets I hear. So midnight streets, this is at night time when obviously the city should be slowing down, people should be sleeping. We've got here youthful harlot's curse. Okay, so let's look at the word harlot. A harlot is a prostitute. Okay, the word curse as well we're going to look at in a moment. So it's pointed out here that the prostitute is young woman. Okay, it's about youth, it's about innocence. And obviously innocence should be for the young, but if you're a prostitute, you're no longer innocent. So there's this almost juxtapositioning here between this contrast of youth, inexperience, and experience. Here, youthful harlot. Now the youthful harlot's curse could mean more than one thing, so that's ambiguity again. It's ambiguous, the word curse. It could mean that she's swearing, okay, using expletives, or it could mean that they have been cursed, okay, that she is putting a curse onto the people of London given her experiences as a prostitute. Therefore, the people are under threat. So the mistreatment of this harlot could possibly, potentially be threatening to the population of London. Then we have blast. So the curse itself, either way it's spoken, blasts the newborn infant's tear. So blasts as well, that place of b there, okay, is angry. Blasts the newborn, innocent, pure baby, okay, and it blasts their tear. So it's causing the baby to cry out. Innocence, okay, has already been corrupted by this youthful harlot's curse, already tarnished before even had a chance. So it's that loss of innocence. And blights, okay, the word blights means to spoil or damage. It blights with plagues, again, suffering, poison, the marriage, sorry, my cat's getting involved, the marriage hearse. Okay, so marriage hearse, here, a hearse is transport for the dead. So that's obviously a symbol of foreboding of death. Okay, blights with plagues, the marriage hearse. Now, marriage is something celebratory and positive, and a hearse is obviously symbolic of death. So therefore, it's an oxymoron when you put two single words together to form a phrase that extremely contrast. So two words are linked to form a confusing phrase, marriage hearse. So marriage should be a happy celebration of the joining of life, the bringing together of people, whereas a hearse represents solitude, being on your own and dead. So something positive will always, therefore, be corrupted and ruined. Something as positive as a newborn infant, innocent, is blighted, is spoiled, okay, and poisoned, leading to the marriage and death. Okay, marriage, the bringing together, something celebratory, always results in something negative like death. So that oxymoron at the end of the poem really brings home What is the point in something positive if the negative is all we have? Okay, so now that we've finished looking at the poem, and remember this isn't an exhaustive thing, there are lots more things to spot, things like there's some nice sibilants in here. Miss Terrell Peter told me the other day that this, look, H-E-A-R says here, that's to do with sound. So there's lots more to look at, but based on our understanding of that, we can look at some themes that appear in this poem. So I've narrowed it down to these 4 for us. So we've got the power of humanity here, so humans having all the power. So there's the power of the church and the monarchy, power of industrialization, okay, so in other words, commerce, industry, that's all man-made things, with the chartered and the industrial revolution. Powerlessness as well of poor and innocent people. So it's not just power of humanity, it's the power of some humans and others have not. Power of revolution as well. He encourages us to stand up to one another, humans against humans. Then you've got anger is another theme. So the anger is expressed, which is obviously conflict, in a lot of this, through anger, through sound. So that repetition of crying all through the different people that cry out or are sad crying makes us angry as readers. Plosives as well, like blast and blights with those plosive b sounds make it sound angry. Angry at the church, obviously that's expressed through the blackening. Anger at the monarchy, with the runs in blood down palace walls. He's angry as well at the restriction, so that's that mind-forged manacles. He's angry at people for allowing themselves to be restrained and restricted. Okay, another theme is individual experience. Firstly, we know that because it's a first-person perspective, so that use of I, which is the very first letter in word in the poem. It's all about his opinion on what London is really like. I put really in quotation marks there because it's his version of London, as if he is the expert and he's giving us the inside information. In other words, the truth behind the facade. This is industrial London. This is supposed to be the capital, the centre, okay, of industry and empire. And here we are seeing the truth, the kind of falsity that is presented. Then we've got everyone else has mind-forged manacles and is corrupted. It insinuates, doesn't it, that he does not therefore restrain himself and is not restricted and corrupted, therefore his experience is different. And we've got loss or absence finally. So things that are missing or gone. He misses obviously his old city, now it's been chartered. It's about a loss of innocence as well, that a lot of youth here who are supposed to be innocent and the future have had their innocence taken away. Loss of freedom as well, with the mind-forged manacles, with the restrictions, the runs in blood down palace walls, means that people aren't free to choose at all. Contrasts as well, there are a lot of contrasts in this poem. So contrasts between those that have, i.e. the monarchy and the church, and those that have not, like the chimney sweeps and the harlots and the babes. And we've got that juxtapositioning there between the two, but also the oxymoron at the end, the marriage hearse. What is positive will be corrupted and destroyed. So that's just some of the themes present. Okay, so now that we've discussed a lot, all of this and the themes, what do you do with it? Well, what you need to be able to do is make sure you understand all this. So this is amity. You are going to be doing your own amitying at some point, but it's just a reminder of what amity is. So you need to be able to work out what the poem's about, what the message is, what happens in the poem, who is talking, any first impressions that you have after listening to this information. Also work out the mood of the poem. Is it meant to be happy, sad? Does it change at any point? Does the pace affect that? So when you read through, the punctuation will dictate that for you. Any semantic fields, so collections of words that are all to do with the same theme, will also help you work out the mood. Ideas then, what are the big themes present? We've talked about some of those. Which one do you think is most pertinent? Is there a bigger idea or message? Does William Blake want us to change or do something as a result of reading this poem in that time period? Does it relate to a human experience or shared belief? For instance, death, grief, love, hope, etc. Technique-wise, we came out with at least 7, if not more, so pick your favourite 3. They could be figurative language, structural techniques, any sounds that are created, or any specific use of punctuation. We didn't look too much at that this time. And then finally, your response. How does it make you feel or think about this particular topic now? So how does it make you feel about London in the Romantic period? And has it changed your opinions or feelings about what you already knew? And why? Why did Blake want us to feel that way? I would, if I were you, copy down all of the relevant stuff, and then in your heads at least, or writing down please, make sure that you know all of this information for that particular poem. I've really enjoyed doing this because this is my favourite poet of all time, and I could probably make about 100 videos on William Blake. If anybody is interested in any extra stuff when we get back to school, you can come and find me, and I will chew your ear off about William Blake quite happily for hours. Anyway, thank you very much. Happy studying.